Hello and welcome everybody to the podcast You're Better Than That, hosted by me, Hannah, and I'm joined by my friend Zoe today. Hello, Zoe.
Hello.
So we are talking today about something that really hit a bit of a nerve with everybody the other day. I posted something on my Instagram stories to see what people thought about this particular quote, and I got a whole range of responses, and it made a lot of people go oof when they read it. So Ryan Holiday, who is a very well-known author, he wrote books like The Obstacle is the Way and lots of other books about discipline. He said this, he said, to procrastinate is to be entitled. It is arrogant. It assumes you will have the discipline to get to it later, despite not having the discipline now. Harsh.
Ouch.
And possibly true. Both of those things, I think. Really tough to read, and for some people it created quite a visceral reaction when they saw this quote. Some people thought, gosh, this is really true and I'm being a bit entitled when I'm procrastinating, but a lot of people thought, yes, but it's not that straightforward. For loads of us, doing things that we don't feel like doing, or doing things that we don't love, or just doing things sometimes that even if we do normally love them, we lose a bit of our mojo, can be really hard. We've got the winter months coming. Sometimes even getting out of bed can be a challenge for people. Doing things that we would normally find a bit easier get a little bit harder. Maybe big projects we've got coming up, breaking those down can be difficult. And this whole idea around motivation when we don't feel like it is a big deal for loads of us. Because if it wasn't, we'd all be smashing everything we ever put our minds to. And so I thought it'd be really good for us to talk today a little bit about finding motivation even when we don't feel like it. What do you think, Zoe, affects your motivation? Do you feel like you're always 100% motivated, or what do you notice, and what does it look like for you?
Definitely not always motivated. I would probably say it's similar to what we were just chatting to someone earlier. I think I have to believe in something and know the meaning behind something. And if I don't feel connected to that, then I don't feel motivated to do something.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for me to get going.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, totally. I think sometimes I don't get going because I don't know why I'm doing it, or I don't think it matters. Sometimes it's because it feels so big and overwhelming. I don't know where to start. Excuse me. Sometimes I don't get motivated because I don't want to. I don't really enjoy the thing. Sometimes I don't get motivated because everything feels so overwhelming and there's so much to do that I just want to do nothing. I think there's lots of things that get in the way of motivation. And sometimes it's about the idea of, this doesn't feel great now. I know it might feel great later, but I can't feel or imagine that because all I can feel is that this is a thing that's got to be done. And I think sometimes we just get downright tired of doing stuff, and motivation can be hard to keep finding. And like you say, especially if it's then things that we don't really even believe in, or we don't know why we're doing them, or we don't know if we can do them. And I think there's often a reason why the motivation's lacking. And those can be like physical reasons, like you're literally just tired and you just need some sleep and some rest. Or they can be more around, what's underneath this as to why we don't want to do it. And I don't think we should always ignore it. Because if you feel like you don't want to do something because you don't know why you're doing it, then perhaps there's something to pay attention to there. Like maybe you need to make a change, not to that day. If you don't want to go to work, you can't just stop going. But maybe you need to think about, do I feel like this all the time? What is it that I need to listen to about why I feel like this all the time? Or is it seasonal, or is it something about a specific task that I need to think about?
I was just thinking about how oftentimes in winter and in darkness, it's really hard to be motivated. Like even going for a run, all of a sudden at 6 o'clock at night, it's dark.
Yeah.
Picking yourself up.
Why would you want to do that?
Exactly.
Why would you want to go out the front door when you're now you're in the cozy?
Yeah.
We often say in this house, in the winter time, it's that whole, right, we're back, we've shut the door, we're not opening it again, we're in and we'll stay in. And then the thought of going back out to do anything, you're right, gets harder and harder and harder to do. And I think Ryan Holiday's point there is that in those moments, that's where discipline or routine or order can really help. But not everyone is designed to be brilliant at that.
Yeah.
I mean, Ryan Holiday is amazing, and I absolutely take my hat off to the things he's achieved. But I would argue that as well as cultivating good habits, he has a natural personality that leans towards discipline and order. And some people listening to this pod will be those individuals. They love a plan, they love order, they love routine, and they don't like breaking it. In fact, they're more struggle to break the routine because that can leave them with a sense of anxiety.
Yeah.
My eldest son finds it very difficult to not do the things he said he's going to do in a day. So it's the opposite problem, that he needs to sometimes think, I can let this go today.
Mm-hmm.
And almost there are personalities like that. But if you're listening to this and your personality is not like that, that is not an excuse not to do things, but maybe Ryan's techniques will be not so appropriate for you.
I'm just thinking,
Just feel bad.
Yeah. Last week we were talking about wintering well, and how do we hold reducing the expectation of ourselves and also keeping motivated when it matters? Like, what's the line between those two things?
Yeah, that's a good point, because we did talk about how there may be times where we just need to just not do as much and say, actually, in this time, for this month, I'm perhaps not going to do some of those things. And yet, there is another bigger narrative, which is there are also things that do need to continue to happen. And we cannot get to the point where we just say, well, actually, I don't feel motivated to do the thing. I can't say, well, sorry, I don't feel motivated to wash my children's clothes. I mean, I could on a certain day, but I can't do that for more than a few days, because then I've got a big problem. There are things that have to be done, whether we find that we want to or we ever find the motivation to do them. I'm working on a really big project at the moment, and I have got to make headway in it. So me saying, oh, it's winter, so I'm not going to, it's just not an option. You know, there is a difference behind being in a season of like gentleness with yourself around things that are optional. But then there will be things in our life that need to happen. And I think sometimes we can even struggle to find the motivation for those things. And we really need to find ways to help ourselves to do that. So I think one of the first things we could look at is the different things that could be resistance. So there are 3 ways that we might find ourselves having resistance to doing something. 3 reasons why we don't have the motivation. One reason is we feel this sense of I've got to do it. And so sometimes within us, we want to resist the fact that this is an obligation. So that's one reason. You might be feeling, I'm just sick of having to do obligations, so I just don't want to do it because I have to.
Yeah.
I'm tired of doing the washing. I'm tired of checking my emails every day, and this sense of having to. That's one form of resistance. That might be your reason. The next reason might be because you just don't want to do it because it doesn't feel right. Maybe it's something within you feels at dissonance to doing it, i.e. it's crossing your values, or you don't see the importance of it. And there could be a lack of motivation because you're not really sure why you're doing it. And internally it feels like a compromise, or just not sure this is what you want to be doing. And then the third reason that we might not do something is because we feel this sense of resistance because we think, I can't do this. I'm not sure that I have what it takes to do this. I'm not sure if I can complete this, so I definitely can't start. And so that feeling of overwhelm because this is a big deal, or something that's asking of us and we're not sure we're capable of, that can be another reason. So I think when you're thinking about why am I lacking motivation, understanding, is it because you're feeling an obligation? Is it because you're not sure that it's the right thing? Or is it because you're not sure that you are the right person and that you can do this? And I think that's quite helpful, because rather than just clumping everything into this I'm not motivated category, it helps me see the difference between what's going on.
Where do you see yourself leaning towards mostly?
So I think the I don't feel right about this is probably not a massive feature for me at the moment. I feel that that's been in the past. I mostly feel like I'm doing things that I think matter, that feel important. Probably sometimes when you are very busy, when I feel very busy, everything starts to feel like I'm doing this because I have to. And I start to then listen to a narrative which is, this is an expectation on you. You've got to do this. You know, this is expected of you. You have no choice. You must do this. You have to get this stuff done in your home. You have to get this stuff done for work, for any other voluntary role I have, or any other responsibility to wider family. It all starts to feel like obligation. And the thing about that is that we have the opportunity to reframe that to I choose to. And it's something I'm working really hard on, actually, is when it feels like I have to, turning it into I choose to. I am reflecting often on my feelings inside when I might start to move a bit towards resentfulness, not necessarily towards a person, but resentful to feeling obliged. I get to turn that to, actually, this is something I get to choose to do. I have every agency here to choose to do this thing that needs to be done. And so I think probably that's the biggest one for me. Now, I said to you before, I'm working on a bigger project. I think when it comes to big projects, most of us at the start of that project, whether that's a work project or, I don't know, the renovation of this house that we're sitting in, or whether it's you're going to run a marathon or any large sort of fitness goal, trying to lose weight, whatever it is, at the start, you can just think, this is so huge, I really don't even know where to start. In fact, visually, I can remember there was a time when we were stood in the kitchen of this house. This house was a massive renovation project. We didn't live in it for 6 months. We had a very small budget and a very big problem. And there was one point when we were stood in the kitchen and we'd done a bit of the dismantling work, and you could see all the way from the kitchen all the way to the roof tiles. So you could see through the ceiling there, through the net, there was holes all the way through to the roof tiles at that point. And when you're at that point of dismantling, you think, I've started this thing. I just remember going, this is never going to end, and this is bigger than I'm capable. And that I can't do this, or we can't do this, felt really real. So you might be listening to me and thinking you're about to embark on something, or you're just early stages on something, and you think, oh my goodness, what is this huge thing that I've got to do, and can I possibly do it? If that's the thing that you're feeling, I think there's two things I'd say to that I've learned. One is, I am very good at telling other people, well, you start something, you practice it, and you get better at it, and you'll get there. You'll get to the place you want to. I say it all the time to my youngest son, who's revising for his GCSEs now. Stop expecting yourself to be able to do something straight away. We all have to practice. We all have to do this thing to get better at it. Stop assuming you'll be able to do it straight away. Do a bit every day and you'll get closer. I keep saying that to him about maths. Do 10 minutes a day and you'll find that you're so much better at it if you do. Now, when it comes to me, I've got to remember that advice and think, how do I practice this thing so that it doesn't feel so enormous, and I realise I'm making incremental progress towards it. Somebody said to me recently, you know that old phrase, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And it's such a silly phrase, but I keep saying that to myself at the moment. If I've got a bigger thing to do, I have got to just see it as lots of smaller things. That's the way to be able to succeed. This task today, this bit tomorrow, and then you'll start to see those things stack up, and that big thing is then complete, and you're sitting in a house and it's completed. So that's one of the things I think for sure. And I think the other thing, this whole I have to becoming I choose to, is a bit of a practice. Almost like a mental practice, catching yourself and thinking, am I moving towards a little bit of resentfulness here? Am I feeling like I'm doing this because it's another one of my long list of obligations? And can I actually make a choice to say, actually, this is in my choice to do? Can I alter the way I'm feeling about this into something else? I think another really good point that we've both related to already is this idea of you've got to know the why underneath something. That doesn't mean we have to know the why about every single thing we're doing. I don't need to understand the why behind why I have to empty the dishwasher, or why the floor needs a mop. But there are a lot of things that we do that actually do have connection to really important meaning, even menial tasks. Actually, what is the why underneath what you're doing, and do I care about that why enough? And I think when there's something that we've got to do or we want to do but aren't feeling motivated for it, shifting that why to something that really resonates with you can be hugely helpful. So if we just take an example of something like a fitness goal, for some people, the fitness goal being, I want to be someone who can say completed a half marathon or done whatever it is, might be a motivating factor. But for other people, that's not remotely motivating. So that's where you've got to know and understand your personality and think, what is it that matters to me?
Yeah.
And knowing your personal values there can really help. So if your personal value is family, you might actually be able to flip it to being, I want to complete this fitness goal because I want to be healthy for my children. So yeah, that's a completely different underlying motivator. And I think for each of us, if we can learn to understand and know our values better, we can start to align the task with the value that matters to us. And everyone listening to this, you'll have, your own set of values. If you don't know what they are, I've said this before, go and work those out, work out what they are. And if you can't find that the task aligns with your values, you've got to ask yourself some different questions. When you start to feel like the why doesn't matter anymore, there's a bigger conversation to be having there. And maybe you're trying to find motivation for something that maybe you need to not do anymore.
And I love what you're saying, actually. There's some things where you just have to get done, and that's stuff that we have to tick over. And it's kind of like, cooking the dinner or whatever. But with the other things, not being a victim to what we're choosing to do and making sure that stuff aligns with our values is so good. Because so often we can find ourselves being like, I've got to do this, I need to do this. But actually, do you need to if it's not something that really matters to you? I just find that really interesting.
Yeah, maybe it's something you just don't do, or you delegate to somebody else. Is it something that you don't need to be doing? Is it time to ask for some help with that? Is there somebody else who can help you? Something else that I think would be worth talking about is willpower. We haven't used that word yet, and people often talk about finding willpower, or that person's got loads of willpower, that person's got no willpower. We don't fully understand willpower. It's a thing that is part of our determination and our ability to make the right choices. And what's quite interesting about some of the research around willpower is that it's almost like you have a bucket of willpower at the start of a day, and every time you're making decisions or choices, you're kind of taking a little bit out of that bucket. And so that's why, as we get towards the end of the day, you're looking in that bucket and there's not much in there. You can start to find that willpower is leaving, and you haven't got the willpower you started the day with. I get so frustrated with myself in this way. I am one of those people that will be like, right, I am not going to eat that kind of stuff. I'm going to eat really healthy choices, and I will make really good choices all day. And then it will be about 9:30. And then suddenly it feels like willpower has left my body entirely. And then I just open that cupboard, or I find that thing that I know is there. And that's when I'm more likely to make those choices. And I bet there's loads of people listening. It doesn't have to be about chocolate. It can be about anything, but they can feel that sense of it fades as the days go by. And there's some research that I read about that judges were monitored around their decision making, and they discovered that they made better decisions generally in the morning than the afternoon. And that's, again, this whole idea of fatigue, decision fatigue, the ability to make the right choices, the ones, it's something as old as time for us to feel this sense of I do the thing I don't want to do. And it doesn't have to be even a bad choice, like a good, bad, eat the chocolate, don't eat the chocolate. It could just be, I'm just not choosing to do the thing I know I need to do and I want to get done. And so if you almost think about your willpower as being something that's finite, we've got to try and make it last the day.
How do you do that?
Yeah, great question. I think sometimes we're trying to fit too many things into a day. And if your day is jam packed in your brain, and you're thinking, you know your limit, and you know, when am I starting to make poor choices, maybe your day needs to have some adjustment so that you don't. Maybe you remove the thing that's the problem. Like, I need to just remove the chocolate from the household, or go to bed at that time. There's a couple of other little hints and tips I want to give people, because we love this podcast to be really practical and for the you and me of the world, people who are living normal lives, doing normal things. I think the first thing I've said already is you've got to know and understand your personality. What helps you get motivated? If you can't do work alone for long periods of time, don't. Go work in a coffee shop. Go work in the office. Don't try and motivate yourself with what works for somebody else. If you can't work when there's loads of people around on an important thing, don't. Go and remove yourself. Do the opposite. So know and understand your personality to know what gives you energy to make better motivated choices. I meet a friend to walk the dog regularly. That's motivating. It simply means it happens in a time that it maybe wouldn't. A couple of other quick things. If there's something you need to get done that you don't do so often, let's say it's a work task, you have to do, you have to fill in an expenses form every week, for example. Put it in front of a high frequency task and say, I'm not going to do that thing until I've done that. So I'm not going to check my emails until that job has been done. Like, place it in front of it, get it done. Another thing to do is to say, I do that thing at this time every week. So you put it on your diary and it says Friday, 2 p.m, finances, or whatever is the thing you're not motivated to do. Put it on the diary. I can't tell you the difference it's made to my life by simply blocking the time onto my diary to say that's when that task will happen. I think another motivating factor is to build accountability externally. I do that all the time, and I say I will get that to you for then. Use that if you're motivated by pleasing others, and make it work for you. I think another thing is to set the bar low, and to, if it's a big thing that you're overwhelmed by, just say to yourself, I'm just going to do that for 5 minutes. You know, Couch to 5K, that works because you start by doing like hardly anything on day one. So if you've got a massive project to do for work, just say to yourself, I'm just going to look at this for 10 minutes today. And then maybe the next day you look at it for 15 minutes. And then you suddenly realise you're in the flow, and actually it's quite easy to do an hour. So approach it in that way. And then I think the other thing I found really helpful for me around motivation, around things I don't want to do, is to try where possible to pair it with something that you do like doing. So a very simple thing from my life is I really don't like food shopping. I really don't enjoy it. So I always take my AirPods and I always listen to a podcast or a book. And it massively redeems the time for me. And I look at it and think, I'm getting to listen to something that probably I otherwise wouldn't whilst I get this job done. So very simple things to do. Know yourself, know your values, and try and find ways of tricking yourself into some of these things that you want to do that you might find more difficult to do. And I think on that, be free of thinking to just copy what works for somebody else. You've got to know and understand you. You're not Ryan Holiday. I'm not Ryan Holiday. And I can learn from his discipline, and I definitely can grow in discipline, but I will never actually lead with discipline in the way he does. So I have to use me and the way I've been made. I can be just as successful with my time management, but what motivates me might look totally different. And I hope that's freeing. I hope that's releasing to the people listening. Now, as we're coming into land today, we just want to give you a little bit of a forewarning and a heads up that we are going to be trying out some different formats, and there's some new things coming, isn't there, as of next week?
Exciting.
Yeah.
So we'd love feedback as well as
we would.
Changing format and stuff like that. So let us know what you think.
Yeah, we're going to try and continue to be as helpful as we can to equip you for your everyday life, but we're trying out some different formats to do that. So watch this space.